Ready, set, go.
Welcome to The Sweet Spot, an Updog podcast. I'm Andrea Morissette.
And I am Jack Faley, and we are your hosts today.
And today, our very special guest is Tracy Custer. Woo! Tracy Custer is our dog judge for Freestyle Crown. And Jack and I did a previous super fun two-part episode on our judging experience of Team and Human. And today we are lucky enough to be joined by Tracy for some feedback on the dog category. But first, before we get started on that, we want to learn a little bit about you, Tracy. So tell us a little bit about you, your name, where you're from, dogs, all that good stuff.
Put me on the spot. So I have been doing Frisbee probably longer than most people have been alive that are doing it currently. No, really. I've been doing it since 2001, I think was my first year. And it turned into a career somehow along the way, where I was doing performances. That started like 2006, and then I worked at Dre and Farm for about 12 years with you and Sarah. That was the best time of my life. That was
Me too.
so much fun. Totally miss it. And yeah, so my husband and I have right now we have 16 dogs and a foster puppy, and so it's always hopping at our house. And yeah, so we Frisbee, agility, dog diving, tricks. Just enjoy time with the dog. And of course, I have my collar company, Ninja Bling.
Ninja Bling! Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, shout out.
16 is such a low number for you, Tracy. I think most of the years you've been over 20 dogs.
I know. Well, the foster puppy looks like he's going to get adopted this weekend, and then one of the other dogs is getting adopted too. So we're down to 15. Good number.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Tracy, today we wanted to talk to you about Freestyle Crown. So Freestyle Crown was the largest Freestyle Crown we've ever had. We've doubled our largest number of entries as we have in previous years. And we are very grateful and excited to have you as the dog judge this year. So what was it like for you judging a virtual contest that had over 110 teams?
Can I just jump in real quick too, Dre? And just, sorry, I just wanted to let Tracy know. Tracy, you were requested, by the way. Like a bunch of folks commented on our previous episodes, and they're like, we didn't get to hear from the dog judge. Is there any way that you could get Tracy on to talk about this? So just so you know, I know there's going to be lots of free folks that entered the Freestyle Crown that are going to be happy that we're doing this episode. So sorry I jumped in on that question. I just wanted you to know like that you're in demand.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. He's pretty used to being in demand.
Yeah, so judging that many teams was crazy. Like, I think I had this grandiose idea of sitting down and doing it all, like in one group of time, and it didn't work that way, especially with life, taking care of all the dogs and everything. So it took me a couple days to get through it, but it was super fun. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed being able. I tried to judge just watching the video one time through, just exactly as you would if it were a live performance. But it did give me a chance to go back and look at something. I was like, wait, what was that? Or I missed something when I was maybe making a note. So I enjoyed that part. It wasn't a little challenging though, because I did notice some of the players used a really small, tiny space because that's just what they had available to them. So it made it a little tougher to, judge that against somebody playing in a big, wide open space. But I tried to accommodate that as best I could. But yeah, I thought it was a blast to judge that many teams and people that I don't get to see very often play. So that was really an honor.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that, because I had team categories, so use of field was one of my skills that I was looking at, and we talked about that a little bit last week. Was it that we did that where it was hard to judge people for certain skills when they had a much smaller space, and as opposed to like it's hard to do flat work when you're in a small space. It's hard to do use of field when you're in a small space. And so sometimes players' limitations impact their, the skills that they're able to showcase.
Yeah, definitely. And I felt like that made it tough to showcase, obviously, to showcase the dog in that small space. And they did, the ones that used those tiny areas, they did a good job with what they had.
Yeah.
And it still made it a little challenging to judge.
So I know you were saying that you kind of had a grandiose idea of sitting down and doing it all at once. I mean, I did the same thing, I think, as Dre. Like I would go until I got too tired and I realized I was no longer judging at the same level. I was like, I'm too tired right now. I need to step away for a second and come back to this. And it got both of us thinking about, like you don't get that luxury in a real competition, especially these big finals events. Like, you've judged at many big finals where we've got, 100 teams there, and you don't get the opportunity to go, pause, I need to step away for a little bit and, come back to this tomorrow morning when I'm fresher or anything like that. And how, what a tough job it is to be judging that number of players at a live competition.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this year I judged UpDiff and I judged USDDN World Finals, and it was challenging. For me though, I'm kind of like the human version of a cattle dog, so I can just get super focused on that one thing, and I almost thrive in that environment. I've always been that way, like as a student when I was in high school and college. So for me, it isn't too challenging to stay focused and on task. Yeah, I mean, once I get in the zone, I kind of stay in the zone, but I totally get it. Like it's a lot to ask judges to sit there and watch that many teams. And then when they do have breaks, the breaks are kind of, you got to be quick. You've got to get to the restroom. You've got to eat your lunch. You've got to go potty your dogs, whatever it is you need to do. So there's not a lot of time for just like relaxing and maybe like meditating or whatever you need to get back to the zone. Yeah.
So Tracy, when we were talking, I messaged you about judging, and I asked you first when we were talking about Freestyle Crown. So you got first pick of whatever category you wanted, and you chose.
Wait, this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
I didn't.
You got first pick.
Well, to be fair, Jack, we've already had this pre-conversation, and I know, and you know, that either one of us will take a player or team.
Right.
Anytime.
That is true.
So
that is true.
I knew that either one of us would be fine with that. So if she chose those, I was fine taking dog and just giving you the other one. So I asked her first, and she chose dog. So tell me a little bit about why you chose a dog category, what you love about dog category, like a little bit about that.
Well, I absolutely love dogs. I love watching them move. I learn so much when I'm judging canine or dog, because every time I watch, I see something different, like how a dog moves or why it's making the choices it's making in relationship to the handler. I specifically chose dog for this because I had come off of judging canine at USDDN, which it's similar, but it has different breakdowns of categories. So I wanted to kind of challenge myself to switch gears and look at the dog or the canine scores from a different standpoint. And so I really enjoyed doing that. I felt like it kind of opened my mind to, like, how can I, even as a judge, how can I take the different subcategories from UpDog and use them to better evaluate dogs if I'm judging Skyhounds or if I'm judging USDDN. So I feel like the more I can, in fact, I think I judged canine at every event I did this year, with the exception of one USDDN where I did team. So it was just kind of cool to like do a whole season of judging canine. And,
really diving into one category.
Yes, like really, really getting into the little nuances of it all.
That's cool. So that makes me curious. Like, what did you notice different about our subcategories versus? And I know, like, AWI, Skyhounds, UFO, they don't, or PIDC don't necessarily have subcategories. I think it's mainly USDDN and us that do. So what did you notice that was like different, or what was your experience of judging the two different subcategories?
I appreciate that you guys have a category for flash, which isn't really like written out in USDN. It's just kind of a sub thing where it's just, is there just something about that dog that has that sort of superstar quality? The other thing that I don't think is reflected as much in USDN is tempo. And a dog, I mean, it sort of is, but it's not like spelled out correctly like it is in Custer. So those are like the biggest differences I think I saw. I mean, they really are looking at kind of the same things. It's just broken down into different like sub areas, subcategories.
So being that you kind of did like a deep dive in dog, like you said, you've been judging it all year. What are some things that you would say to our listeners that, you know, we need to maybe, what are some things we need to be doing maybe a better job of? Like watching, you know, how do we help our dogs showcase their skills better?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing that I noticed in this event, but at every event I judge, is, and this is strictly a handler skill, but it's throwing with intention and purpose. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, especially on outthrows, when you look at more novice and intermediate teams, a lot of times the outthrow is an afterthought. I just got to get this disc away from me so I'm trying to get my disc and reorganize and get to the next spot on the field. So there were times I would see, even from the most novice team, I would see a glimpse of brilliance from the dog where the handler would just put the throw out on a dime. The timing was perfect. The placement was perfect. And it enabled the dog to collect and make that leaping catch. But the difference is it wasn't consistent. When you looked at the top teams, it was much more consistent. So the placement of the disc, especially on their outthrows, to incorporate not just timing, but the placement of the disc, and also using more curved lines to create more interception than just chasing. So like to explain if people don't understand what that means, if you think about a dog floor coursing, like greyhound or whippet, and they're in full extension, their weight is fully on their shoulders. They're absolutely not rocking back and using their hind end at all. They'll push off their hind end, but all their weight is on the front end. When your dog is chasing down a lure, or essentially chasing down a disc that's thrown straight out in front of them and they're in full pursuit, the same thing happens. It's really challenging for a dog, especially if the disc is low and out in front of them, challenging for them to rock their weight back, set their body, organize, and leap for the disc. So when you start to create curved lines, now suddenly the dog is intercepting the disc, and you give a lot more opportunity for the dog to collect, to organize their body, and to make the catch. Not only are they not going to be in over pursuit and overstimulated, but they're also going to be, generally speaking, their stride's going to be shortened, and they're going to be using their hind end better. So that would be the biggest thing that I could recommend, is people start creating more, and it lends itself well to updog, right? Because shapes are such a big deal, flatwork is such a big deal. So if you can push a dog off of a plank, just a curved line, either clockwise or counterclockwise, and then set your disc out, it just really creates a lot more opportunity for the dog to move.
Hey, Jack, does that sound familiar?
I was just going to say, I'm seeing a pattern across all three categories here.
All three categories. That was our most common. That was our most common feedback, was use shapes to create interception to help the dog catch and show athleticism.
Yeah.
And it connects to so many things too, because it's likely, in my experience, that it's going to be a catch instead of like a pre-jump or something like that. Like typically I see pre-jumps happening mostly in like fast pursuit, you know, where the disc is directly above the dog, and like, so you're going to get better catch opportunities. It's going to impact, like you said, Tracy, the flat work score. It'll likely impact the disc management score. So it's like all of these things, and shapes, like you said, Dre, all of these things are interconnected. And I know for a lot of maybe our beginner and intermediate teams, Tracy was the dog judge, but we're really talking about things that we control as handlers, with where we throw that disc, how we place that disc, our movement of our controlled movement of the dog around the field, and all of those impact the dog score. So like, it's not as if as humans, we only are responsible for the human and the team part of things. We have to like help our dog out. We've got to set that disc in the right spot. And so like I think sometimes, especially beginner teams are like, yeah, my dog is great. And that may be true, but as a handler, we have to like provide the opportunity for our dog to showcase that they're
Oh,
great.
that greatness. Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Jack.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can have the best dog in the world, the best dog in the world, but if you're not growing to showcase that or handling them to showcase that, we'll never see it. So yeah, it's all, like you said, it's so interconnected.
And it's interesting too, like different dogs, like, handlers that might play with different dogs. Each dog is slightly different too, and you have to like adjust a little bit and play differently. And I know one of the biggest challenges I had as a handler was when I shifted from playing with my dog Tally, who was a very linear pursuit dog, and then when I got my dog Spice, I tried to play with her in the same way that I played with Tally, and it just wasn't showcasing her skills. She was an amazing dog, but as a handler, I wasn't getting those good dog scores because I wasn't doing what Tracy was saying, and I wasn't like setting my dog up for an interception. I wasn't putting my dog on a flank, and when I started doing those things, then the judges started seeing, oh my gosh, Spice is an amazing dog. And so it's really like it all comes down on us just to put the pressure on more, right?
Totally. Totally.
Somehow, somewhere or another, we created it, right?
All right, so that was like something that you saw across, like that was a pattern that you saw across many teams, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Any other patterns that you saw across lots of teams when you were judging that maybe was a pattern of comments that you gave?
Yeah. In relation to grip and also like disc management skills, I saw two vast ends of the spectrum. I saw dogs that either spit the disc out as soon as they made the catch so they could turn and burn to the next disc, or I saw dogs that would hold the disc they just caught and either create a disruption in the flow because the handler had to call the drop, or the handler would throw the next disc before getting an actual drop, and the dog would either blow it off, or so either dogs that were not holding or dogs that were holding too long. So what I try to train my dogs to do, and what I recommend most folks do, is you got to get that drop at a distance on a cue, and the default should be for the dog to hold and carry the disc until you call the drop or you call the next trick, whatever comes first. And that's going to enable you to get the disc placed and dropped where you need them for your next sequence or set. Your disc won't end up all scattered all over the place, and you won't have to, there were a couple handlers where the dog wouldn't out quickly, and they were waiting for the dog to out, and they'd call it and wait and call it and wait. It just disrupts the flow, right? So that was definitely one I saw that was pretty consistent, mostly with more novice and intermediate handlers. But I did see it with some more experienced teams playing with like newer dogs, where they were just, especially at a distance, those dogs were spitting discs out. As soon as they make the catch, they turn to run back for the next thing, and then that handler's just ended up 30, 40 yards away. So yeah, that was a big one.
I can hear you saying that. And as an experienced player, I agree with all of it, right? And I know that I add those layers, but I was just listening as one of our newer teams, because these are the people that are like experiencing that. And I immediately felt so overwhelmed about how to create. Like, obviously, I had that problem also when I first started, and I trained it. And now no problem.
Okay, Matt. Dog needs to go out.
Yeah, so like for me, when I heard that, I was like, well, now I got to create a drop at a distance, and my dog needs to learn to carry it the entire time until I tell them to do something else. So like, I just got overwhelmed by like thinking about like, I thought it was okay that my dog dropped at a distance because everybody else's dog, right? So like, how do we like break that down for a new team?
Okay.
The two disciplines of like not like we have to train them how to do it on a podcast, right? But like, I'm just thinking if we have a team out there that's a young freestyle team, and they're one of the teams that they can't get their dog to carry to the next thing, or they can't get their dog to drop, like, what do they do to help solve those problems? Because the dog is away from them at both of those instances, right?
Right. Well, I think for me, I guess to break it down and say the default of the dog for the dog to hold it. I never really thought of it that way. Like the way I trained it just sort of ended up being that way. And I think that the main game that I start, you start with everything close to you, and then you're slowly moving it away. So the game that I've had the most success with is just a simple 2-disc toss and fetch game, short game, like 20 yards, 15 yards. They're 2 discs. Send them out on the first one. When they make the catch, I'll ask them to bring it and then call the drop relatively close to me and send them around again and pick up the second one when they're coming back. Now I can start to call the drop a little farther away or have them bring it a little closer and just vary it each time. Sometimes I can reward with a tug. Let's say I call the drop a little farther away and they give me a good one. Now I can reward with a tug, which might be like a higher value reward for that dog. But yeah, just start the little close, simple game to create the drop. A lot of times, if a dog's really sticky on a disc, I'll teach it with a completely different toy first, like 2 wubbas or 2 whatever, and build the drop with something that's not so high value or overstimulating for the dog, and then transfer it to the disc. You can also use food rewards too, and that's something I've moved a lot more into after working with Sarah. I don't think I used food rewards when I was working with toys very much. They were kind of separated. And I think it's a valuable thing to teach your dog to go back and forth from one to the other. And of course, it can be more challenging with more food-driven dogs, but you could use a lower value food. But yeah, if you get a good drop at a distance, like call them in and pay them for some cookies or toss the cookies if you're in a space where they can easily find them. But yeah, it all starts with like little small games that are close to you. And then as the dog starts to get the drop close, you can move it out just a little farther. And I like to kind of ping pong things too. So just because he's now dropping it 10 yards, I don't want to immediately move out to 20 yards, or I might, okay, you're doing great at 10. Now come in and do one at 5. Now go out and do one at 15. Okay, let's go back to easy ones again. So that we're not always challenging them with more difficult things. We can add in, spice in some little easy things too from the game.
That's great feedback. Yeah, it just, and that's great feedback for the new teams, and I think that gives them something to kind of hold on to. The other thought that I had when you were sharing that is I think that as a judge, especially with new teams, we can see when there's training and development there, and we can see when there's no training and development there. Right? So like if they're working on their dog dropping at a distance and cueing stuff, you can see it as a judge. And if you're not trying at all to do that, we can also see that. So it occurred to me that like maybe somebody's working on that stuff and their dog's not great at it yet, but I think the judge still gives, I mean, I do as a judge, if I see training in progress, even if it's not completed training, I still give some sort of credit for the training that is there, that is in progress. Does that make sense? Versus like somebody that, like we were talking about earlier with the out throw, where like I call it an F it out throw, where they're not even paying attention. They just like fling the disc and then go pick it
out there.
So like that person's not paying attention. They're not trying to throw with intention, right? Versus somebody that tries to throw with intention and maybe they're a little off or a little early or a little late. That would reflect in the scores for me as a judge to see that they're making an attempt to do a more advanced behavior, even if it doesn't work.
Well,
does that make sense?
It should be. I think maybe your wording. I want people to know, like, it's not just if Dre's watching you. It would be if any judge. It should be if any judge is watching you, because if you're working on that skill, there's going to be evidence on the field, and that's what we're going to see. Is we're going to see that evidence, like Dre said, maybe it's not complete, maybe it's not exactly the way that we want it to occur or that the handler wants it to occur, but we're seeing at least partial evidence of that skill being done because you've been training it. So sorry, I just wanted to like let everybody know it's not just Dre.
That was a good clarification.
Every judge.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, new teams can kind of be overwhelmed by freestyle in general. And then to have this dog skill that's at a distance, so it's pretty hard to manage. And then you can have training in place for that, but I don't want people to feel like it has to be perfect to try it. Like,
Yeah,
as a
I
dog
never
judge,
think.
you can see when they're trying to add a layer of that stuff, even if it doesn't work.
Yes, and I would tell people that these are not skills that are built overnight, even within a season. Like these are skills that develop over years and years of training and play. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, and the more dogs you own, the quicker you'll get at beginning to get those results. But even for an advanced player, my dogs aren't peaking until they're 5, 6, 7 years of age because it's a slow progression. And if you can look at it like that, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint to try to, improve your game and improve everything. There's always something that you can improve upon. And then the second thing I would add is that I think a lot of people, maybe they're working on those skills, and when they get out into a competitive format, they don't hold the same criteria. And a lot of it is their excitement of being out there, right? And I mean, I do this. Like I have a dog that I'm working on holding the disc until I call the drop. And if I get out there at an event and I forget, then my disc ends up everywhere because I'm just caught up in the moment of the excitement of playing with my dog. So I think especially if it's a new skill you're managing, you have to hold your criteria and be willing to do a little training on the field. Like if the dog spits it out early, I'll make him go get it before we move on to the next sequence. Like, oops, you dropped that, go get it, bring it closer. Okay, good job. Now we'll move on. So that helps too.
That's a really good tip. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that I like what you said, Tracy, about like you hit your stride, when your dogs are about 5. And I do think that I know myself, I did, like when I first started, I wanted to be at the level of these teams that I saw out on the field, like yesterday, like I wanted, like, oh man, I need to be doing that. I need to be doing this. And sometimes I would take shortcuts that I would then realize now I got to go backwards and fix this if I'm ever going to be able to do this, or if my dog's ever going to be able to drop at a distance or whatever the thing was. I definitely learned over the course of playing with multiple dogs that sometimes going slow is better at first because it just gives you so many more options than as you and your dog build that relationship.
Yeah, I completely agree. And every dog's so different. You have to go at that dog's pace. Like, and I agree. I think when I first started in the sport, I did the same thing. There were some players out there who were, had dogs winning world championships at age 2 or 3. And, I think the advent of social media has been great in many respects because we can take online courses, we can train together virtually, but it's also created more competition, I think, too. It's really easy to get caught up in that. Even now, I go on and I look at the video, I'm like, oh my God, look at what Andrea Regular's doing. Andrea Moore said she's just out there, I can't like let that push me or push my young dog to get to that level when we're not ready yet. It will come with time.
Yeah, layers like an onion. Many layers to add, and we want them all. Yeah. That did bring me another thought that I think Jack and I had this conversation last week about something. But my question as a dog judge, right? So let's say like one dog comes out and it's a Jack Russell Dachshund mixed, and the next one is a Whippet Malinois mix. How do you, like for the players out there that don't have a super athletic, big leaping, fast dog, like maybe they have a slower dog or a dog that has different strengths than what we would typically see as like the strong strengths of a typical good Frisbee dog, right? How does that work out judging wise? Like the maximum capacity of the dog. What's the maximum ability of the dog, and how do you judge that scale? Because I think that's something we hear a lot is like, well, I just don't have a fast, big leaping dog, so I'm never going to be a good freestyle player. And that's not true. If you're with good judges, to a certain extent, there's strengths of the dog, strengths of the human, all that. But tell us just a little bit about the different skill sets of the dog and what their potential range is against other dogs that may have different strengths that are like more athleticism versus one dog that maybe uses its mind better for tricks. And how does that compare on a scale of 110 teams where the dogs are all over the place in regards to what their strengths and weaknesses?
Right. As a dog judge or canine judge, I always try to look at each dog and compare them against other dogs that I've seen or that I've known play that are similar. So I'm looking at your Jack Russell and judging him against what I know other Jack Russells to be capable of doing. Like, he's not going to play the same or leap the same as a border collie, who may not play or leap the same as a whippet mix.
Right.
So I try to really stay impartial in that way. Like, and there are things that a Jack Russell can do that you can't do with a border collie. Lots of really clever small dog tricks you can incorporate to showcase what that dog is, what his ability is. So I tell people, just because you have a dog that's not like the traditional, what is a traditional Frisbee dog anymore, right? Like, now it's like the sort of the standard that everybody is judging their dogs against are these whippet mixes or whippets, because their athleticism is off the charts. Like, so anything else pales in comparison if that dog is playing at the highest possible level. But still doesn't mean that you can't create an outstanding routine that showcases what your dog and its breed and its type are capable of. A great example was, when I start to watch a routine, I try not to have any judgment. Like, if it's a big dog that comes out, somebody comes out with a Great Dane or something, I'm not going to immediately write the dog off in my mind, like, oh, Great Dane is not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. And a great example of that is, and I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Gosia.
Yeah.
So she starts her routine. I've never seen this player play.
That dog was amazing.
And it's a big dog, right? It's a bigger dog. And I see the dog, and they start with a really cool little pre-routine section, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, whatever. It's kind of a bigger dog. And then the dog starts jumping, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, completely caught me off guard. Not what I was expecting. And so I think that there are lots of skills you can teach away from disc that will improve a dog's leaping ability and rear end awareness to make your Jack Russell the best Jack Russell it can be on the field, or to make your pug the best pug it can be, or whatever you're playing with. So I think those are things a lot of people don't spend enough time on, like jump grid work and rear end awareness work, backing up. Like, these are all great things to work on this time of year as we go into the winter.
Where would they find it? Where would they find those resources?
Oh, okay. So jump grids I'm a huge proponent of jump grid work. I come from a horse jumping background and then agility. So Susan Salo has a great book. It's still available on Amazon and I think at cleanrun.com. She used to have a DVD, but I don't know if that's available anymore. But it's a great book that just lays out all kinds of jump grids that you can set up. It explains the striding and how that's going to be different between a small dog and a large dog. It kind of explains how jumping works. Now, of course, it's very different for a dog to be jumping a stationary object than it is to be jumping and chasing something that's moving in the air. Yeah. But the skill set of leaping and jumping is still the same. So a couple of the grids I use a lot in there is the set point jump. And you can use this one for teaching overs as well. And then the adjustable stride grid is another one that I really like. And then you can, once the dog is doing this really well, you can then add a disc at the end of the grid. So the dog is now, not only are they having to jump well, they're having to stay collected and not get overstimulated as they target a moving object at the end. That makes sense.
You have such good feedback. I have like questions popping in my head. Jack, I don't want to totally dominate this conversation. Do you have a question to jump in there? Because I have like 2 more questions lined up.
Too late.
We'll talk for hours.
I'm gonna go put this demon back in his crate because he's wiggly.
No, I enjoyed listening to that, Tracy, and thinking about that. And just as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, I haven't done enough jump work in the past with my dogs minus the disc. You know what I mean? Like I think that for lack of knowledge of what to do, I've of course done agility, like put agility jumps up and done agility work with jumps and things like that. But like I just know there's so much more that I probably could be doing to help my dogs with their just awareness and jumping. And like you said, then when you add the disc to it, I mean, we are asking our dogs to do a lot. We're asking our dogs to calculate a lot in their head. Like, all right, my handler's on the ground. I got to jump over them. They're going to throw this disc, hopefully not late. And I've got to leap up and then, catch this disc and land nicely. I mean, that is a lot going on for the dog to be thinking about. And of course, having a lot of good jump foundation is going to make that easier for them, make it more natural for them too.
Yeah.
Dre, what would be awesome is we should figure out a way to get those links to that. Yeah. And put that on there for our listeners.
Drop it in the,
and for me.
The thing that's for you to do in post. Tracy, another question that's come up recently, and so I'd love to talk about it on the podcast because it's about this topic. You have direct experience with large freestyle dogs, and I get asked all the time from my students, what are some things we can do with these shepherds, these big 85-pound shepherds for these smaller women that are like 5'1", 5'2", 5 feet, giant dogs. So as a dog judge, when you see a big shepherd come out on the road, or a big mal or a big dog come out on the field.
Big lab,
right? So I know what I know about it. You know what you know about it. But I think because there's so few examples for people to pull on recently, because 15 years ago or 10 years ago, when you were jamming with Siren, there weren't videos everywhere or RAM.
Right.
It's not accessible like it is now, right? So they can't go back and find all the Rampage videos. They can find your Wubba routine, right? But like there's all kinds of stuff out there that like they can't access from top players who've had big dogs and they don't have them currently. And what we have right now is like these whippets and mal mixes that are just incredibly fast and athletic. And it's different from how a shepherd's going to play. So what would you say, what help can you give to players that have these large dogs for ideas of like what you'd want to see as a dog judge that would showcase a large dog well? And I don't need that to be, I don't want it to be a super complex answer for you or a hard question, but like what's going to help them? Because I've only played, the largest dog I've ever played with is like a 50-pound dog.
Right.
It's not even that large.
I think, and I actually, this was actually in my notes that I took watching a couple of bigger dogs from the Crown videos. When people play large dogs, they usually, especially if they move from a smaller dog, they're not giving them enough space. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is big dogs, big stride, they need a lot more room to adjust their bodies, to like make a quick adjustment for a disc in the air. They need more room to set up for a vault or for an over. For a flip even, my gosh, you've got to wing it up there. You really got to give them more room, more time, more space.
Bolty behind you. I picture a Bolt.
So,
he had some of the best flips in the business, and he was a big dog. He was over.
Yeah. So I think people just don't give them enough room and enough space and enough time. So if you're going to do vaults or overs or really anything, your throws have to be a little higher and a little earlier because even if they're a fast dog, it's going to take more time for them to shorten their stride and adjust. Especially if they're generally speaking, they're not going to be as good at quick inside work, right? Because they can't.
Takes them longer to
get the next trick. So you can still do inside work. You just have to set it up differently and give them plenty of time and space. And it usually means as a handler, like when I was playing Siren, if I had a sequence where it was maybe a vault into another vault, when I threw the first vault, not only did I have to turn to move into the second vault, I had to turn and step away because she needed more room to get to me to set up properly. And you don't ever have to vault or do overs with bigger dogs. One of the tricks that people love the most that I did with Randy was hind leg stuff. So when he would stand on his hind legs, his head was literally right in front of my face. He was almost as tall as me. And so I could do like a hind leg multiple or a juggle with him. And it was just like a crowd pleaser for shows, and judges really liked it. It showcased his athleticism in a different way. So, athleticism isn't just about running fast, jumping big. If a dog can balance in a sit pretty, or they can do a foot stall, that requires an enormous amount of athleticism and core stability, right? So that's going to increase.
Especially for a bigger dog.
Yes. Yeah. So any kind of tricks that you can incorporate that showcase their core strength and their balance, their stability, unique things that maybe showcase their size, like that hind leg work, anything like that, I think would really stand out.
Perfect. Thank you. Because I know that a lot of people really struggle with that for big dogs, because what they learn, right, is flips, overs, vaults, dog catches. And
right.
And that's very difficult to get safely and well, where the dog is actually like using their hind end. When it's a larger breed dog, they tend to lean more forward, more like a train, right? And build up slowly, and then it's harder for them to stop and turn.
Yeah.
I think that falls along with what we talked about the last two episodes, where we just talked about different handlers, different dogs will find their points in different places. And that's what's amazing about freestyle, is everybody doesn't need to look the same. Everybody doesn't need to be doing the same tricks. You can get a high score by doing things differently than that team that you saw on YouTube, or the team that won the last competition, or whatever it is. That's what makes this sport so amazing, but that's also what makes it very challenging for judges. They really have to look at all of those nuances to make sure that they're judging each team and each dog, appropriately.
Yep. All right, I have one more great question for you, Tracy.
You've already declared that it's a great question.
It's a great question. I love this question, because the reason why we're in this sport as adults, as people, humans, is because we want to be reinforced, right? We want to have fun. And we get reinforced by playing a game and getting a score in some capacity. Good score, bad score, whatever our reinforcement marker is, right? So if we want to talk about how we can improve our dog score, what's something that you like? What would boost a score for you, a dog score for you? What would be exciting for you to see from the dog category that would like create a boost in a score? Like, I can think of some things in player, team, whatever, things that like would be very unique or whatever that would elevate a score for me. So what are some of the things that come to your mind? And I'm like, what are some things that would really boost a score? Maybe at the end to be exciting, or in the beginning, or like in general?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
Like, I think, are you looking for like individual?
Well, the thought that I had,
traits, or just like an overall picture?
Well, the thought that I had is like, at the end of a freestyle routine, most people do a dog catch. But if you wanted to have more innovation, maybe don't end with a dog catch. But if you wanted to boost your dog score with something other than a dog catch, what's something that would create a surprise? See, because here's the deal. We're sitting on our butts watching 110 rounds. If every one of them ends with a dog catch, it's not that interesting. I don't care how good your dog catch is.
Right. Okay. No, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So like everybody has flips, vaults, dog catch, over pattern shapes, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
As a dog judge, what's something that gets you excited? What's something that like would stand out for you? What's something that you're like, wow, that's a great idea? And not necessarily a specific trick, but like, what keeps you awake? Like for me, it'd be at the end, like a 1, 2, 3 throw, or something that has anticipated.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of
everybody's watching.
Yes. With Trick, I used to end her routine with the two disc
Double
throw,
disc.
where you do two discs at the same time and they separate.
Yeah.
Until she stopped doing it in competition.
Because that's a really hard dog skill.
It's a hard thing, yeah, right? She'd do it in practice every day, and then one time in the competition, she's like, I'm not gonna get that first one, I'm only gonna get the second one, and then it fell apart and we had to retrain. But anyhow, so something like that. And this is a handler thing, but I find it really exciting. James Tang, like when he starts his routine, he does these cool little rollovers. He does this monster hammer throw that's like 50 yards down the field. And it is one of the most exciting moments of his routine. because the dog is literally hauling butt, all the way down the field. So I think a really long, exciting throw, a unique release, with hopefully a big leap and catch at the end is something that gets me really exciting. Showcase the speed of the dog. Or if you can showcase your dog's control when they're in high drive, right? And that's very challenging. So that double throw is kind of an example of that. Or Troy Mole used to do that 3-disc thing.
Yeah, the under short long.
The long high one first, and then he would throw the 1-2. Wouldn't that be cool if you threw the long high one and then you did that double throw? Like, if you could think of things like that, are exciting.
Don't give away all my good ideas.
You can
I'm pretty sure you asked her to do this.
Yes, you did. That the dog can still, their brain doesn't explode with drive and excitement when you showcase whatever trick it is, where they're having to almost wait for one thing to get to another, or if you can figure out a way to showcase that.
That's perfect. Yeah, because I'll tell you right now, that's what I'm dealing with Capiche. I have to reformat our whole routine because she can't keep her stuff together in the beginning. She can do it in practice. Jack alluded to this earlier. There's moves that the dog can do in practice, or you just said with trick, right? There's moves you can do in practice that when they get a higher drive, they can't do it. And as a judge, we can see that. We can see when it falls apart. We can see when they hold their stuff together. And what you just said was another great point about collection and drive into something, like showcasing that specialness a dog could have. That's something that Leap could do that was exceptional. He could be at a full flat out run and he could chip and pop a fully collected over. So for dogs that have the ability to have nice collection, to show it in a difficult presentation where they have to choose to do something that not many dogs can do. Kind of like the big fish in a small pond versus small fish in a big pond, right? If you focus on areas where other players are weak, or other dogs can't do that skill, and you focus on accentuating that difficult skill, it'll stand out more than a well-executed skill that everybody else is doing.
Yes. I agree with that. When I'm playing Hexnut, it is not a good overdog. He never has been. It's something he and I don't, it's a skill that we don't do well. And everyone else is doing such great overs, like the overs that we can do fail in comparison. So why put them in the routine, right? I want to showcase skills that showcase him, his athleticism, and our bond as a team. Another thing and this is you can't even really describe it, but when a dog is out there and they're really having fun, it's different than a dog that's just going through the motions of the routine, or maybe the handler is a little anxious or nervous, and that transfers to the dog a little bit. But when you just see a dog out there that's so full of joy and enthusiasm, you just can't help but to smile and be excited about it. As a canine judge, it shows right away when I see a dog that's like that. Yeah, it's just so happy to be out there.
Yeah, excellent point.
Because hopefully they're all happy to be out there.
Yeah, the scores drop for me if the person's angry, frustrated, shaking their head at their dog, or the dog is not engaged.
Yes.
So, but people they think about what they could lose points at, but they don't think about that they can gain points by having fun.
Yes. A good example at UFO finals last year. So this was Snapper's first big finals, big dog, right? And the first day he has this nice flying dog catch, and he was blowing it off. He was jumping in my arms, but he wasn't ripping the disc. So after the first day, I was like, well, that's not working. So I did a take. Here, take it. Yeah, you did it. And the judges afterwards came up to me and they said, we appreciated that so much. We haven't seen somebody at a world finals do a take, they're training in maybe forever. Judges see that. They would rather see you taking the time with a young dog who's not confident while they're out here and making them successful. And then by the last round of that weekend, he did one. He did an actual dog.
And then everybody was yeah, that's really great.
Tracy, one of the things that I always observed you do and was impressed that you do it all the time is you always look like you're having fun. You always have a smile on your face. And like I have to force myself to do it. Most of the I guess I have resting whatever face when I'm out there. And and trust me, I'm having fun, but no one can know. I'm gonna keep it all to myself. How do you was that something that just kind of came naturally to you, or did you like have to like really think about, okay, I'm gonna smile when I'm out there. I'm going to make sure that the judges know that I'm having fun, or was that just something natural that you just
I honestly, for me, I think it was kind of natural. So I'll share a really geeky story. I used to be in show choir in high school, so I had to perform in front of people a lot. And so that, and then I don't know, just doing courses and always kind of being in front of people, performing in some capacity, that really made it easier for me. I think I've gotten better at it over the years, but I think a lot of that is just feeling comfortable enough when you're out there that you can just let go, and knowing like if things go wrong, which they're gonna go wrong at some point, it's okay. You can shake it off and you'll learn from it and move on and get out there another day. So you just have to be able to laugh it off. And they're dogs, and you never know sometimes what they're going to do. So sometimes strange things happen, or you have a bad day where you're just not throwing well and you're not connecting as a team, and that's okay. You've got to learn to let it go and not let it like eat at you or haunt you. So
one of the things I like to say is that freestyle is like, it's like a series of chaotic failures, and it's a practice of making the best choice at the right time. Like freestyle isn't about doing it perfectly. I think I maybe had 4 or 5 rounds in my 15 years of playing this sport where it was like easy and perfect ever.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the time, it's a series of chaotic mistakes that I'm using my tool belt to fix with the right tool at the right time. And so it's like a process of accumulating tools, right? Developing tools and then practicing using them. I would say for your smile thing, that is definitely trained from show choir on. You're wonderful at smiling. You're wonderful at smiling. You're one of the best in the sport, honestly. Like pretty much every picture of you is smiling. And I learned it at Purina because I also have a resting bitch face. And I remember when we have a lot of photographs being taken and a lot of stuff. And when you have all these photo series being taken and none of them are you smiling, you learn to smile real quick. So yeah, I think you've had a lot of years of practicing that lovely smile. And I think that for me, after generations of dogs now, so my 3rd generation of disc dogs, what you just alluded to, that you just have to let it go. Like this is part of the journey. And in my 1st generation of disc dogs, I thought there was some place to get to. And when you get there, like there's nothing there. You just start all over again. And then your dog retires, and then you start all over again with a new dog. And so like that's the whole thing. The whole thing is right. It's the series of failures and mistakes and learning and training and growing your layers and layers of disc dog just to retire it and start all over again. And so if we're waiting for some ultimate time where it's all going to be smiley and happy and easy when we play freestyle, that's not what the game is. It's very rarely.
Wait a minute. Wait. This is never going to get easy? What did you just say? It's never going to go perfect. All right, everybody listen up. It's never going to go perfect. It's never going to be easy. What else do we got to say? This is highly motivational.
Well, okay, here's motivation. The reason people ask me a lot of times, why do you keep doing this after all these years? Because I'm chasing that feeling or that moment when it does all go perfectly.
Yep. It's amazing.
Like it happens sometimes in practice. It happens sometimes at events. Like you never know when it's going to happen, and so that just chasing that feeling of, oh my God, we did it, and that doesn't mean winning. It doesn't mean winning. Like you could have like the best routine out there
in a show,
chocolate fudge, and be done for the day. But the feeling of that routine, like that lasts for that sort of aura about it lasts for days and weeks and months sometimes.
And I remember when I started, it was about that too. It was, but it wasn't like it was smaller chunks, like I was working on, I was a fool and I was working on skip tosses and I was like, yeah, I really want to get that skip toss. And I can still remember around at, remember when they used to do Florida States, Dre?
Yeah.
Up in Jacksonville, and I was playing with Tally, and I can still remember it was just such a good feeling because that skip toss, it was an overhand wrist, skip toss. And it went up, hit the ground, went up perfectly to a leaping Tally. The rest of my routine was horrible, by the way. But I remembered that because it hit the way I wanted it to. And so you can have small little moments too, to just say hey, I just want to hit this sequence, or man, I'm really trying to get this vault or this dog catch or whatever it is. And I totally agree. And I think that's for me anyway, that's a sports thing. I had that same feeling when I played different sports. I can remember certain little moves or basket that was made or a goal in hockey that was made or something like that, and it sticks with you. So I told, when you said that, Tracy, it just, that connected with me, that that's just for me anyway from sports, and it could be from other competitive areas as well, that you're just chasing that moment of yeah, I did it. That was what I was. That was what I've been practicing. That was what I've been working towards, and I nailed it.
Yep, I love that stuff. What are you thinking, Jack? Are you feeling time warpy yet?
I think that it would be great. Let's do it. Let's do our time warp challenge. Does Tracy know what we're talking about?
All right, so Tracy, at the end of each of our podcasts, we have a speed round where we ask you 10 fun questions and you have 6 seconds to answer them. They're not serious questions, they're just silly questions. The goal is to try and get all 10 answered within 60 seconds.
Oh God, okay.
Okay, it's fun. Are you ready? Jack, are you ready to go first again?
Sure.
All right, perfect. Oh, I like that first question. All right. Okay, ready, set, go.
What's the worst smell?
Chill's farts.
How late is too late to cancel plans with someone?
Oh, 5 minutes before.
Love you.
What is the first thing you would do if you became president?
Oh, I would legalize abortion and marijuana.
Yeah, 35. What's one thing you'll never do again?
Never do again?
25 seconds.
Oh God, I don't know. Can I pass? Can I come back to
Pass.
it?
Go for it, Jack.
What's something that didn't need to be invented?
Oh, geez.
You're hard.
I don't know. That's really hard.
You're thinking too much about it. Whatever happens, whatever comes in your head, just go. All right, reset. Give her 20 more seconds, Dre.
I already paused it once. We're gonna do it again. Have you broken any bones?
Something that shouldn't have been invented? I don't know. I don't know.
She didn't hear your question, Dre.
Have you broken any bones?
My thumb playing goalkeeper in soccer.
All right, next.
What is your favorite dog dish to throw? I skipped one, Dre.
I like Super Swirl.
All right, soup. Do you drink it or eat it?
Eat it.
And
last
question. Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper?
Diet Coke.
Oh, throwing us for a loop over there.
Time warp complete.
All right, you did make it through all 10 questions. We did an extended speed round for you, Tracy, because we love you. Thank you.
Yay.
Those were hard questions for our questions. There was a couple I was like,
I think Tracy was just being very thoughtful. That's what it was.
Yeah.
She wasn't just blurting out something that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for taking time out of your busy schedule, especially your Ninja Bling schedule. I know that you guys have a lot going on over there. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be on our podcast and to judge Freestyle Crown. We are very grateful for your expertise. And thank you, Jack, for being my co-host as usual. If you guys are looking for cool topic ideas, we would love to hear what you want to hear about. So we're going to be posting to the Updog Challenge discussion page for you guys to give us ideas on topics you would like to hear in our podcast. So we're going to be posting that soon. Keep an eye out for that.
And if you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, you'll notice that you have an opportunity to comment on the episode. There's been a lot more folks doing that, which is awesome. So continue to grow this little community and comment and tell us what you thought about the episode. We will respond back if appropriate. And if you listen on Spotify, there's always a survey that you can take at the end. We will have the Coke, Dr. Pepper. What was it? Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper. We will have that survey for you. So we'd love to know your thoughts on that question as well. Tracy, I want to thank you as well for joining us on the podcast. And I also want to thank you for all the times that you have judged. I always feel lucky when I get judged by you. And I also know that as a competitor, sometimes you're giving up the opportunity to play with your dog to judge for other folks. And I really appreciate that. And I would also challenge other folks out there, like if there's a competition that needs a judge, maybe it's okay to take a week off and just do the judging so that everybody else can play freestyle and you'll get rewarded. It'll be returned back to you another time. So thank you, Tracy, for always doing that for us. I appreciate it as a player.
We love you, Tracy. And in the meantime, everyone, be kind to each other.
And be kind to your pups. We will see you next time.
See ya.
Man, I'm really trying to get this vault or this dog catch.
I don't care how good your dog catch is.